Hi, I'm Isabella. I'm 34 years old, and I thought I knew my sister better than anyone in this world. We'd been through everything together: childhood secrets, teenage heartbreaks, family tragedies. But what she did after giving birth to her twins, it shattered everything I believed about family, loyalty, and the person I'd called my best friend for over 3 decades. Let me take you back to 6 months ago when I got the call that would change everything. It was Sarah calling from Mark's phone. Mark's name flashed on the screen and I almost didn't answer. She'd been so moody during her pregnancy that our conversations had become challenging, to say the least. "Bella!" she screamed before I could even say hello. "They're coming! The babies are coming!" My heart stopped. She wasn't due for another 3 weeks. "I'm on my way," I said, grabbing my keys and running out the door in mismatched shoes. The 20-minute drive to the hospital felt like hours. Sarah and I had dreamed about this moment since we were kids, playing with our dolls. She was going to be a mom, and I was going to be the coolest aunt in the world. We'd planned it all: sleepovers at Aunt Bella's house, teaching them to ride bikes, being their safe space when they fought with their parents. But when I burst through those hospital doors, something felt wrong. Sarah's husband Mark was pacing in the waiting room, his face pale and drawn. When he saw me, he didn't smile. He didn't rush over with updates about how Sarah was doing or how excited he was. Instead, he just stared at me with this look I couldn't quite read. "Mark, what's happening? How is she?" I asked, breathless from running. She's fine. The babies are fine. Healthy." But his voice was flat, empty. "That's wonderful!" I reached out to hug him, but he stepped back. "When can I see them?" "Bella, we need to talk." Those 5 words sent a chill down my spine. In my experience, conversations that started with "we need to talk" never ended well. But this was supposed to be a celebration, not a confrontation. "Can't it wait? I just want to see Sarah and meet my nephew and niece." Mark shook his head slowly. "Sarah doesn't want to see you right now." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What do you mean she doesn't want to see me? I'm her sister. I've been planning this day for months. I took time off work. She's made her decision, Bella. I'm sorry." I stood there in that sterile hospital hallway, surrounded by the sounds of new life and celebration from other families, feeling like my world was crumbling. Sarah didn't want to see me, her own sister, the person who'd held her hair back when she had morning sickness, who helped her paint the nursery, who'd been there for every single doctor's appointment when Mark had to work. "There has to be some mistake," I whispered. "We're best friends. We're sisters." But Mark just walked away, leaving me standing there with a growing dread in my chest. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. And I was about to discover that what I thought was wrong was nothing compared to the devastating truth that was waiting for me. I didn't leave that hospital for 6 hours. I sat in that waiting room, calling Sarah's phone over and over, texting, even trying to get information from the nurses. Nothing. It was like I'd suddenly become a stranger. Worse than a stranger. At least strangers get basic courtesy. Finally, around 8 p.m., I saw Mark coming down the hallway with 2 car seats. 2 tiny bundles that I couldn't even see properly because he was walking so fast, head down, avoiding eye contact with everyone. "Mark!" I called out, jumping up from my chair. "Please, just tell me what's going on. I'm her sister." He stopped, but didn't turn around. "Bella, go home. This isn't about you." "Isn't about me? Those are my niece and nephew you're carrying. Sarah is my sister. How is this not about me?" He finally turned, and I saw something in his eyes that made my blood run cold. Guilt. Pure, unmistakable guilt. "Some things are more complicated than they seem," he said quietly. "Sarah will call you when she's ready." But she didn't call. Not that night, not the next day, not the next week. I drove by their house 3 times that first week. Sarah's car was there, and I could see lights on, but when I knocked on the door, no one answered. I knew they were home. I knew they could hear me calling Sarah's name. My mom was just as confused as I was.
Maybe it's postpartum depression, she suggested when I called her, crying. You know how hormones can affect new mothers? But I knew my sister. This wasn't hormones. This was intentional. This was calculated. And the more days that passed, the more I realized that something had happened. Something that went way deeper than a new mother needing space. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who gave me the first real clue about what was going on. I was checking my mail on a Thursday afternoon, still feeling like I was walking around in a fog, when she approached me with that look people get when they have gossip they're dying to share, but know they probably shouldn't. Isabella, dear, I hope you don't mind me asking, but is everything all right with your sister? My heart started racing. What do you mean? Well, it's just that my daughter works at the hospital, in the maternity ward, and she mentioned something about your sister's delivery that seemed unusual. I grabbed her arm, probably too hard. What kind of unusual? Mrs. Patterson looked uncomfortable. Maybe I shouldn't say anything. It's just hospital gossip, and you know how people talk. Please, I begged. Sarah won't talk to me. I don't know what's going on, and I'm losing my mind. She glanced around again, then leaned closer. My daughter said there was some kind of dispute, something about the birth certificates, and there were people at the hospital asking questions about your sister and her husband, official people. The world seemed to tilt sideways. What kind of official people? I don't know, dear, but my daughter said it was unlike anything she'd ever seen. There were lawyers involved, and social workers, and she trailed off looking like she regretted saying anything at all. Social workers. Lawyers. At my sister's delivery? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mark's guilty expression, about Sarah's refusal to see me, about official people asking questions at the hospital. What could possibly require lawyers and social workers at the birth of twins? And then, around 3 a.m., a thought crept into my mind that was so terrible, so unthinkable, that I tried to push it away immediately. But once the thought was there, I couldn't get rid of it. What if the twins weren't really Sarah and Mark's? What if my sister, my honest, straightforward, moral sister, had done something so shocking that she couldn't face me? Something that would require lawyers and social workers and official intervention? The more I thought about it, the more pieces started to fall into place. Sarah's strange behavior during the pregnancy, the way she'd suddenly become secretive about her doctor's appointments, how she'd stopped talking about baby names or nursery plans, the way Mark had looked at me in the hospital, not like a proud new father, but like someone carrying a devastating secret. But even as these thoughts swirled in my mind, I told myself I was being ridiculous. This was Sarah, my sister, the woman who wouldn't even jaywalk because she thought it set a bad example. She couldn't have done anything truly wrong. Could she?
I became obsessed. There's no other word for it. For 2 weeks, I barely slept, barely ate. I spent every free moment trying to piece together what had happened. I started with social media, going through Sarah's post from the past year, looking for clues I might have missed. That's when I noticed something strange. Around month 5 of her pregnancy, Sarah's post had changed dramatically. Before that, she'd been sharing typical expectant mother content. Ultrasound photos, nursery progress, cute maternity outfits. But then, suddenly, nothing. Radio silence for weeks at a time, and when she did post, it was generic stuff. Sunsets, coffee cups, inspirational quotes. Nothing personal. Nothing about the pregnancy. I screenshotted everything and created a timeline. The change had happened right after her appointment with a specialist in the city. She'd mentioned going to see someone about some pregnancy complications, but when I asked for details, she'd brushed me off, saying it was just routine. But what if it wasn't routine?
I called the specialist's office pretending to be Sarah and saying I needed copies of my medical records. Of course, they wouldn't give me anything without proper identification, but the receptionist's reaction told me everything I needed to know. Ma'am, you'll need to speak with Dr. Morrison directly about any records requests. This is a sensitive case. Sensitive case. Those two words haunted me. Then I remembered something. Sarah's friend Jenny worked in medical records at the main hospital. We'd all gone to high school together, and Jenny had always had a soft spot for me because I'd helped her pass chemistry senior year. I found her on Facebook and sent a message trying to sound casual. Hey Jenny, hope you're doing well. I heard through the grapevine that you work at the hospital now. I'm trying to surprise Sarah with a scrapbook for the twins, and I was wondering if you could help me get copies of their birth certificates for the keepsake. I know it's probably against policy, but... Jenny's response came back within an hour, and it wasn't what I expected. Bella, I can't help you with this. I'm sorry. There are legal issues involved that I can't discuss. Maybe try talking to Sarah directly. Legal issues, just like Mrs. Patterson had mentioned. I was starting to feel like I was losing my mind. Every lead I followed just raised more questions. Every person I talked to seemed to know something I didn't, but no one would tell me what was actually going on. That's when I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. I know how that sounds. Hiring a PI to investigate your own sister feels like the ultimate betrayal of trust. But Sarah had already betrayed our trust by cutting me out of her life without explanation. She'd taken away my right to meet my own niece and nephew, to be part of their lives, to understand what was happening in my own family. The investigator's name was David Chen, and he came highly recommended by a lawyer I found online. When I met him at a coffee shop downtown, I felt like I was crossing a line I could never uncross. I need to know what happened at my sister's delivery, I told him, sliding an envelope of cash across the table. There were lawyers there, social workers, some kind of legal issue. My sister won't talk to me, and I think she's done something terrible. David looked at the photo of Sarah I'd brought and nodded slowly. These kinds of cases, they're usually about custody disputes or parental rights issues. Sometimes fraud is involved. Fraud? The word hit me like a punch to the stomach. What kind of fraud? Well, in cases involving newborns, it could be anything from falsifying paternity to... He paused, studying my face. Are you sure you want to know whatever I find? Sometimes the truth is worse than not knowing. I thought about Sarah's guilty face on video calls before she stopped taking them altogether. I thought about Mark's behavior at the hospital. I thought about two innocent babies who were supposed to be my family, but who I wasn't even allowed to meet. I need to know, I said. Whatever it is, I need to know. David took the case, and I went home to wait for answers I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what he discovered.
David called me on a Friday afternoon, 3 days after I'd hired him. We need to meet, he said, his voice unusually serious. And Isabella, you're going to want to sit down for this. We met at the same coffee shop, but this time David looked like he'd aged years in just 3 days. He had a manila folder with him, thick with documents and photographs. Before I show you this, he said, I want you to understand that what I found is going to change everything. Your relationship with your sister, your family, possibly even your life. Are you absolutely certain you want to know? My hands were shaking as I nodded. Tell me. David opened the folder and pulled out a photograph. It was a hospital surveillance image, grainy but clear enough to see Sarah in a wheelchair being pushed down a hallway. But she wasn't holding 2 babies. She was holding 1 baby, and there was another woman walking beside her, also holding a baby. Your sister didn't give birth to twins, he said quietly. She gave birth to 1 baby. The other baby belongs to another woman. I stared at the photograph, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. I don't understand. The other woman's name is Maria Santos. She's 19 years old, undocumented,
and she gave birth to a daughter the same day your sister had her son. Maria was alone, no family, no support system, facing deportation. David pulled out more documents. Your sister and her husband approached Maria while she was in labor. They offered her money, a lot of money, to let them take her baby and raise it as their own. They convinced her it would be better for the child, that they could provide opportunities Maria couldn't. The coffee shop seemed to spin around me. That's kidnapping. That's buying a baby. Technically, it's illegal adoption facilitation and fraud. Maria signed papers, but she was in labor, scared, and didn't fully understand what she was agreeing to. The documents were written in English, which she barely speaks. She thought she was signing temporary guardianship papers until she could get back on her feet. I felt like I was going to be sick. So Sarah has been pretending that both babies are hers? The birth certificates list both children as born to Sarah and Mark. Maria's daughter is listed as Sarah's daughter. It's completely fraudulent. David pulled out another document. But here's where it gets worse. Maria changed her mind. 2 days after giving birth, she realized what she had actually agreed to and tried to get her baby back. That's when the lawyers and social workers got involved. There's an ongoing legal battle. "Oh my God," I whispered. "That's why Sarah won't see me. She knows I'd figure it out." "There's more," David said gently. "Maria has been trying to contact you. She found out through mutual friends that Sarah has a sister, and she's been hoping you might help her get her daughter back. She's been sitting outside your apartment building for days trying to work up the courage to approach you." My head was spinning. My sister, my moral, ethical sister, had essentially stolen a baby from a desperate teenage mother and was now hiding behind lawyers to keep her. She'd created false documents, lied to everyone, and was now raising a child who had been ripped away from her real mother. "Where is Maria now?" I asked. "She's outside," David said. "I asked her to come with me today. She's terrified, but she's desperate to get her daughter back. She needs someone with connections, someone who knows Sarah, someone who might be able to help." Through the coffee shop window, I could see a young girl, because that's what she was, just a girl, sitting on a bench across the street. She was tiny, with long dark hair, and an expression of absolute despair. Even from a distance, I could see she'd been crying. "Isabella," David said. "This girl gave birth 3 weeks ago to a daughter she named Sophia. She's been pumping breast milk and storing it in a cooler, hoping to get her baby back. She's been sleeping in her car and working double shifts at a cleaning service to pay for legal help. Meanwhile, your sister is at home playing happy family with a stolen child." I stood up so fast I knocked over my coffee cup. "I need to talk to her. I need to talk to Maria." "Are you sure? Once you cross this line, there's no going back. You'll be taking sides against your own sister." I looked across the street at that heartbroken girl, then thought about Sarah in her beautiful house with her husband and her lies and her stolen baby. My sister stopped being my sister the moment she stole someone else's child. And that's how I found myself face to face with Maria Santos, about to learn the full, devastating truth about what my sister had done and what I was going to do to stop her.
Maria's English was broken, but her pain was universal. "She take my daughter," she sobbed as we sat in my car. "She say is better, but Sophia is my baby. I carry her 9 months. I love her so much." Through tears and halting words, Maria told me the whole story. She'd been working as a house cleaner when she got pregnant. The father was a man who'd promised to marry her, but disappeared the moment he found out about the baby. When her pregnancy started showing, she lost most of her cleaning jobs. She'd been living in her car for 2 months when she went into labor. "Your sister, she come to hospital with her husband when I am screaming with pain. She very nice at first, very kind. She say she help me, she pay for everything, she make sure baby have good life." Sarah and Mark had presented themselves as their saviors. They'd paid for Maria's hospital bills, bought her food, promised her a place to stay, but the papers they'd given her to sign weren't what they'd claimed.
I think I signed papers to say they help me for a little while. They say when I get job, get place to live, I can see baby anytime. But then they take Sophia and they disappear. The worst part was that Sarah had used me as part of her manipulation. She show me pictures of you, Maria continued. She say you are good sister, that you will love Sophia too, that Sophia will have Tia who care about her. She make me think is good family. My sister had used my love for children, my excitement about being an aunt, as a selling point to convince a desperate mother to give up her child. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. Maria, I'm going to help you get Sophia back. I promise you, no matter what it takes. That promise led to the most difficult confrontation of my life. I went to Sarah's house that evening. I didn't call first, didn't give her a chance to prepare lies or excuses. I just showed up and pounded on the door until she had no choice but to answer. When she opened the door, I barely recognized her. She lost weight, had dark circles under her eyes, and looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. For just a moment, I felt a flash of sympathy for her. Then I remembered Sophia and the sympathy disappeared. "We need to talk," I said, pushing past her into the house. "Bella, I can't. The babies are sleeping." "One of those babies isn't yours, Sarah, and we both know it." She went completely white. "I don't know what you're talking about. Sophia Santos, ring a bell? Or are you going to keep lying to my face?" She collapsed into a chair and I thought she might faint. Who told you?" "I hired a private investigator. I met with Maria. I know everything, Sarah. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" What followed was the most painful conversation of my life. Sarah broke down completely, admitting to everything but trying to justify her actions. "You don't understand," she sobbed. "That girl couldn't take care of a baby. She was homeless, illegal, alone. Sophia would have ended up in foster care or deported to a country where she'd have nothing. That wasn't your decision to make. I've been trying to get pregnant for 6 years, Bella. 6 years of treatments, miscarriages, failed adoptions. When I finally got pregnant with Andrew, it felt like a miracle. But one baby? After everything we'd been through? And then there was this girl with a baby she couldn't keep. So you decided to steal her child." "I saved her child. Sophia has everything here. A beautiful nursery, college funds, 2 parents who love her, a stable home. What could Maria give her? A life of poverty and uncertainty?" I looked around Sarah's perfect living room with its expensive furniture and family photos and felt disgust wash over me. Love, Sarah. Maria could give her love. Her real mother's love. The argument continued for hours. Sarah refused to even consider returning Sophia, insisting she was protecting the child. She accused me of not understanding what it meant to want a family desperately. She even tried to manipulate me by saying I could be Sophia's aunt, that we could all be happy together. But I kept thinking about Maria, sleeping in her car, pumping breast milk for a baby she couldn't hold. "I'm giving you 24 hours, I finally said. Either you start the process of returning Sophia to her mother, or I'm going to the police, the press, and anyone else who will listen." "You wouldn't destroy your own sister." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I didn't know this person at all. "You're not my sister anymore. My sister would never steal a baby from a desperate teenager. I don't know who you are." Sarah called me 6 hours later, sobbing hysterically. "Bella, please, we can work something out. Maybe Maria could visit. Maybe we could have joint custody." "Sarah, stop. Just stop. That baby belongs with her mother. This is non-negotiable." The legal process was complicated and painful. There were investigations, court hearings, and media attention that made all of our lives miserable for months. Sarah and Mark were charged with fraud and illegal adoption practices. They eventually pleaded to reduced charges and received probation, but their reputations were destroyed. But 6 months later, I was standing in Maria's tiny but clean apartment, watching her feed Sophia a bottle while singing Spanish lullabies. Sophia was healthy, happy, and clearly bonded to her real mother. Maria had gotten legal status through a program for victims of trafficking, had a steady job, and was taking English classes at night. "Thank you to me," Maria said with tears in her eyes. "You give me back mi vida, my life." As for Sarah and me, we haven't spoken since the day Sophia was returned to her mother. I heard through my parents that she and Mark are in therapy, trying to rebuild their lives and their marriage. My parents are heartbroken about the family division, but they understand why I did what I did. Some days I miss my sister, or the person I thought she was. But then I think about Sophia laughing in her mother's arms, and I know I made the right choice. Family isn't just about blood. It's about doing what's right, even when it's the hardest thing in the world. So let me ask you, what would you have done? When family loyalty conflicts with doing what's right, which side do you choose? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched you in any way, please consider subscribing to hear more real stories about the complexities of family, love, and moral choices. Sometimes the people closest to us surprise us in ways we never expected, both good and bad. But in the end, I believe that love, real love, means protecting the innocent even when it costs us everything. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that sometimes being a hero means standing up to the people you love most.